There's a couple things that I like to do when someone's giving me these types of objections. Number one, I like to try to get them to gauge the ability to proceed. One is time frame, and then the other one is the ability to proceed with this as a contingency. All right, so I'll explain both. Right, so essentially the way I'll look at it is when they say it's not the right time, it's like, okay, well, this guy is an example. I have these three deals. I like to wait until these deals close before we proceed with this deal. They might also say something like, hey, I just got a lead also, by the way, recently where the guy was like, look, I want to sell it. I'm very interested in selling, just not right now. I'm dealing with a lot of personal stuff. I want to sell maybe in the new year. Same type of objection. If it's not the right time, first thing I go to is there a time frame in which we can still proceed? So like, is it possible that like I can give you an offer today, you'd sign it, and we don't close till X? I'll always pivot to that. Right? Like, okay, well, if I happen to get you an offer of 575 or five, whatever the number was, right? If I got you an offer today, would you be able to accept it and then make it, like maybe we close in January? Okay, now that's not for you on this one because this guy's needs to wait until X is complete. Keep in mind that these types of quote objections are actually to me conditions, and you have to decipher which one's which. If it's saying like I need to wait until hypothetically like like I just had surgery, I just had this, I just had that, whatever has occurred, I need to wait until I'm better. You're not going to be able to handle the objection, right? Like, it's like, oh, well, would you mind signing it while you're incapacitated? No. However, if you hear this where it's like, hey, like I have these three deals I'm working on, right? Like the question is, how strong is X, right? To make it where you can't proceed. So if you go like, okay, well, I can understand you'd like to wait until XYZ happens, right? Like in this case, you'd like to wait until these three deals come through fruition. I'm just curious, right? If you happen to come across a deal, maybe full price of what you were asking for, what's occurring with your other three deals inhibit you or cause you not to be able to proceed? And getting 100% clarity of saying, is this still something that will hold you back from proceeding or not? Right? Because there's some instances where they'll be like, look, I like for these three deals to, kind of move along. It's like, what's the difference between 3 and 4? You have 52 properties. What does it matter?
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, it's really understanding the strength of X and then bringing them back to like, hey, like, is this something that will cause you not to move forward? Or is this something where like, you just need a week until, a contract is sent out on one of them? You know what I mean? It's really like that. And not letting off until they say, listen, like what I'm looking for is clarity. Clarity is, can we move forward? Or clarity is like, hey, I'm not doing anything until XYZ occurs. And getting clear on what X, Y, and Z is. And I'm okay with pushing pretty hard on that. Right? So if you want to role play it with me, we can do that. If you want to come off here. I'll be the agent this time. And you give me pushback. Okay. So just say ring ring and then just give me his objection.
Yeah, I'm definitely still interested in selling it. The 540 is about what I'm looking for, but I have 3 other deals in the work and I just need to make sure they go through first.
Gotcha. When you say go through, do you mean close or do you mean just, kind of, see that it's going to go that way?
Yeah, no, we're under contract. They need to actually get to the closing table. We've had some issues on the one.
Gotcha. So just out of curiosity, what would be the difference between having 3 under contract and 4 under contract?
I need to see where I am tax wise once I, kind of have an idea of what I'm walking away with for this year. I don't want to get killed on capital gains.
I can hear that. So just other than the capital gains, is there any other reason why you wouldn't want to proceed on this deal if we hypothetically could get you close, if not full ask?
No, I guess I just don't want to really have to disturb my tenants if I'm not actually going to be able to close anytime soon on it. If, we have hiccups on the other ones, I don't want to upset my tenants and have them start to get worried.
Sure. So again, just to be clear, like, is it the tax issue or is it the fact that you don't want to disturb your tenant right now?
A little bit of both. I'd say probably right now, I don't want to take anybody through there just because the tenants don't know that I'm thinking about selling. Gotcha. But I do still need to make sure that the other 3 transactions close.
So just curious, like hypothetically, because I happen to have a client who, specifically is looking for this type of product, and I figure he would be able to pay you pretty close to asking, if not full ask, which if I happen to have that offer, are you telling me to not present it to you right now based on the situation, or would you still want me to give it to you?
I would still be interested in seeing it, but I'd say at least give me a couple days.
Yeah, look, I mean, a couple days is fine. All I want to ensure is that, like, as an example, this guy doesn't need to close tomorrow. He could close in January if you, need to make sure that, for tax purposes, you're in a good positive position. And also, he's bought dozens of properties like this before. He doesn't need to walk through the property. Some pictures probably would work from previous if you happen to have them. And we can deal with everything later down the due diligence pipeline. Do you feel like this is something that we could probably proceed with?
I definitely have pictures I could send you, but I'll be honest, every property I sell is as is. So I
Yeah.
don't know if I'd be open to any kind of due diligence period for somebody to try to change terms.
Okay. Well, look, why don't we do this? Because it obviously sounds like you're still open to the idea of proceeding as long as the terms make sense. We don't disturb the tenant too much, right? Like, obviously there's a couple things we'll need to be paying attention to, but it's not an absolute no. So I'm going to pause let me pause the scripting here. So, but like, see, like I'm going to push until I find a barrier because there's a barrier somewhere and I need to find it. Because as long as these are just knee-jerk reactions most of the time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And sometimes it's not a real thing, but we make it a real thing internally and we don't continue to push to try to actually find the solution. So do you feel comfortable going back into the conversation or you just want to, maybe some other word tricks?
No, that's all good. Everything I threw at you is stuff I've kind of like gotten from him. So that was helpful to have to go back with.
Yeah, and no matter what, I would still push for an offer, right? Like I always like to be like, so if I had something right now, are you trying to tell me you wouldn't want me to give it to you? Because it's like now it's like most of the time, considering he's interested in selling, he's never going to say no, right?
Thank you.
So, all right, you got it. No worries. Who else has got an objection? Thank you so much, Lauren, for that. Who else has got an objection they want to work through or something you're experiencing within your calls? Maybe a reason why you're not generating a lot of leads right now.
Yeah, I had one I think most people probably get pretty often is just price, whether it's price per unit being too high with multifamily, price per square foot. Yeah, just high pricing from sellers.
Gotcha. Okay, let's talk about price. This one's an interesting one because I have two different modes of thought. And by the way, I know you're driving, so please be careful. Two different modes of thought. Number one is you're probably just not generating enough opportunities where price is starting to annoy you. Where I've seen this a lot. I have an agent that I've been working with for a while. This is real numbers, okay? They've generated 350 leads. Okay, and they've closed one so far. Now they have I think it's like 2 to 3 pending / very hot in the pipeline looking to close. But they have, these are real numbers as an example. Now, on this one, they made like $100,000 on the one closing, but they generated 350 opportunities to close probably, trending to do, call it maybe 2 or 3. So it's like 350 leads to equal, let's do this, hold on. Let's do some math here, right? 350 equals, let's say, 2 to 3 closings, right? So in this type of market, you're looking at somewhere between 100 and 150 leads generated, okay, for one closing. The other 99 or 149, however you really want to look at this, okay, is majority of them are just overpriced.
Are these just guys, when you say leads, are these just guys that have expressed like, yeah, I do want to sell?
Open the idea of selling, correct.
Okay, gotcha.
Open the idea of selling. So this is one thing that I just want to stress to everybody, which is like, it's not that the lead, look, I'm this seller, by the way, right? Like, I'm the seller that you call up a lot where like I own some real estate and you call me up, I'm going to tell you a fucking ridiculous price because I'm not interested in, unless you pay me a stupid number, I'm not selling it. So the biggest question, and I'm glad someone was bringing this up because I wanted to make sure we talked about this a little bit today, which is just the amount of leads you're generating might just not be enough where you're getting this percent. Like this is the ratio right now. Like, and I've talked about this several times where the market / interest rates, however you want to talk about it. Okay. This changes all the time, right? This is, we talk about this, the roller coaster financially of pricing, right? Like, interest rates kind of fluctuate, whatever, right? So in 2020, right? Or call this 2020 / 21, okay? You could buy a fucking mirror and close a bunch of real estate because interest rates were 2% and it didn't matter. So every one of these leads, whether you're generating 5 leads or 100 plus leads a month, it didn't matter. All of them were sellable. Right? The cash on cash returns was stupid. The internal rates of return, in theory, were stupid, right? Because you had the lowest debt cost basically in history. Any one of you could have bought a commercial property in 2020 or 2021 with, by the way, long-term debt on it. Okay, not short-term debt. Long-term debt on it. And you would have had unbelievable returns. Like, people who bought here did very well. The reason why they fucked up, and right now, this is where we are right now. This is 2025. Okay, down here at the bottom. Rates are very, very high. The problem here is when you bought here and need to sell here, you're screwed. But the people who have long-term debt are riding it high and will continue to do well. Like I bought something here where like we had, 10-year debt and who cared? Like it didn't matter. I mean, we happen to be selling right now at a good price, but it didn't matter. We had a very long-term debt on it. right? And I bought 3 properties specifically in this window with good debt on it, which I have, again, long-term debt. It does not matter if I sell it or not. The problem that fucks you up is the short-term debt here. So anyways, to get back to what we're talking about with the leads, here up top, when interest rates were nothing, you could have generated 4 leads a month and probably closed 1 deal. Now, because of where we are at the bottom here, okay, where interest rates are much higher, 3 times as high, okay, 3+ times as high, you're in a position now where you might need to be generating 100 leads to close 1 deal. Now, it's not always 100 leads, but you need to have the mentality of saying, if I'm not generating 2 leads a day, which, by the way, 2 leads a day, Monday through Friday is 40 a month. 40 a month times, let's say times 2.5 months, okay, is now where you get your 100. So it takes every 2.5 months, you'll generate 100 leads where you'll probably have 1 closing right now in 2025 because of how ridiculous interest rates are. It doesn't mean you're a bad agent, doesn't mean the deals, it doesn't mean that anything else other than because interest rates are high, it's much harder to sell commercial real estate, right?
Okay, and so would you say because I know you mentioned that agent had 350 leads and he had 1 closing.
Yeah.
Would you say the conversion right now is closer to that 350 to 1 or closer to 100 to 1? Would you say just on average?
Probably closer to 100 to 1 because again, she happens to have like 2 to 3 deals right now that are either under contract to close or very close to having an accepted offer.
Okay, and last question. So I wanted to touch really quick on buyers as well. So relative to having 2 leads per day on the seller side.
Yeah.
What percentage would you say you should build up on the buyer side? So would it be like 50% being for every 2 leads you generate on the seller side, 1 lead should be generated on the buyer side to build the buyer's list? Or is there any percentage there, I guess, you kind of go off of?
Yeah, so let's just talk, brass tacks metrics, right? I like 2 seller leads a day. I guess this will just be per day. Okay, metrics every day. So 2 seller leads. Typically by default, if you're just making your calls and you're very fluid in the conversations, you're typically going to find at least 1 buyer lead. And then I try to get at least 1 true offer per day. You do this every day, you're going to be in a good position. Now, again, people get hung up on a couple pieces of this, right? A buyer lead, by the way, again, if you're prospecting, like what asset class do you call, John?
Multifamily, industrial, and vacant land. Primarily right now, multifamily.
Multifamily. Okay. So I would make sure that you find a decent buyer lead, someone who, again, would be, somebody who's not just like maybe a first-time investor, right? Like, again, I want to be just as careful when I say lead as, as possible, right? Like, and obviously, as you progress in your business, right, at the very beginning of my career, anybody who had a pulse and said they were open to the idea of buying is a buyer lead to me, right? As you get go along in your business, start closing some deals, you're like, okay, well, someone who says that they never bought a commercial piece of property ever in their life and they happen to have 300 grand in their bank account right now, they're willing to invest. They're not really a buyer lead. So it's just like when I say buyer lead, I mean, again, I'm trying to hone in what I mean by that is just an individual who owns a few pieces of property where it would be more than likely that they would buy something else right now. That's 1. 2, same thing for seller leads, where people just have the idea of work just because they said, I'm open to the idea of selling, doesn't necessarily, in my books, mean that you're a wonderful seller lead. Just because, like, again, like you're experiencing right now, you're finding someone who's like, hey, I'm open to the idea of selling. And then when you get to brass tacks numbers, they're telling you some stupid, ridiculous number that's never going to sell ever. And then it's like, oh, well, the objection in your mind is price. Well, it's not really an objection. The what you're actually experiencing is a non-motivated seller. What happens is, how many leads a day are you, or whatever number you have, like per month, per week, per day, roughly?
I would probably say like 1.6 to 1.7 leads per day for the average of the last few months.
Okay, cool.
Seller leads, yeah, just seller.
And by the way, where are you again, location-wise?
In Toronto.
Toronto. Okay. So Toronto, Canada, I mean, Toronto is a crazy hot market right now. I mean, you know that, right? Like it's a very high demand market. The question is, what is in the highest demand? Because I want to explain this. When you have these types of markets that have high demand markets, comes with a couple flaws. Okay, high demand markets. They come with a couple pros and cons, right? So what happens here is that high demand markets, like ability to sell a good deal or even an okay deal is easy. That's a great pro, right? Like if you find something that's halfway decent in Toronto, you're probably going to be able to sell that almost immediately. It's not going to be too difficult to sell it. Now, again, the con, okay, this is the pro, is finding those opportunities is fucking incredibly difficult because you have Toronto being one of them, but like something is like downtown Miami is another. LA is another. New York is another. Where like you have these very, very hot markets. Okay, very high demand markets. The problem is everyone's calling it. Every single person under the sun. Everyone's calling. Everyone's calling. And a lot of brokers are sharing prices that don't make any sense. So like when you're trying to call, quote, trying to get a deal done, you have a broker right behind you who's being like, oh yeah, Mr. Seller, oh, you spoke to somebody else saying the property's worth 5 million. Yeah, I can get you 9 million. And it's happening all fucking day long. And they actually, I'm not saying they can or can't get 9 million, but they are breathing ridiculous bullshit into these people's minds majority of the time. Because this doesn't happen three towns away or a county away. If you give me a sub market a couple towns away, like an hour away out of Toronto.
Pickering, which I find the same as what you're saying. On the selling side, there's too many data points to where they can see like this property sold for this property sold for that. Whereas in Pickering, I have a multi right now I'm working on. There's not as many data points, so there's more of a spread between the buyer and seller. Plus, you're right. There's a shit ton of agents just trying to get the listing, just BSing their way into getting it.
Correct. Yeah. So like again, there is a lot of pieces in these high demand. So funny enough, I actually stay away from these markets, to be honest with you. I am not the agent I don't want to go into these high demand markets. I personally love secondary markets. I just wrote the weirdest way of writing secondary. Hold on. Now look, when I say secondary markets, what's important to understand about this is not, don't look at secondary markets from the lens of it being a bad area or low demand. I'm not saying low demand. But if I say something like Miami, Toronto, LA, or New York, there is, I might be exaggerating a smidge, but like 25 towns within an hour radius, or 25 cities within an hour radius, right, of any one of these main metros. And it's just going a little outside the main metro that all of a sudden it becomes infinitely easier to do business. Like the spread, like look, just like you said, the spreads are better. The sellers, right, aren't fucking crazy. The buyers are easier to work with. It's like when you're working in these secondary markets, and again, I'm not saying that these aren't good markets. Like secondary, when I say that, is just not primary class A, downtown Miami type of market. And by the way, every single state has primary, secondary, and tertiary markets. It's just figuring out like, hey, if I have like, quote, here's my primary market, I just want to sell here. Right? I want to go, between, 5 and 5 and I'll even say 20 miles, somewhere in this range, right? Away from my primary market. Get away from it. Because it'll be so much easier. Dude, if you generated 1.5 leads a day, whatever you're averaging, in a secondary market versus Toronto, dude, you'd probably close 3 times as many deals. Now, again, I don't know that other market. So, again, I'm not just saying just call in that one secondary market. I would say like, hey, what county is, you said Pickering? I'm sorry.
It's okay. Pickering.
So what county? So Toronto is in its own county, and then this city is in a different one. Or are they in the same?
No, they're in 2 different ones. So that's in Durham region. Pickering's in Durham region.
Okay.
And then Toronto is just Toronto.
Yeah. So I would call that different region. I would call a separate region and just go, I'm going to be, think about if we just go, hey, I want to be the number one guy in a certain area, right? If you want to just be number one, being number one in Toronto is insane, right? If you're the number one guy in Toronto, you're making probably $10 to $25 million a year. Top dog, and like as an example, Bob Knackel in Manhattan makes $10+ million a year, right? He's just absolutely fucking crushing. He's been there for 40 fucking years, so he should be. Kind of makes sense. But if you being number one guy over here, right? Because like this is very difficult to achieve, right? This is a 20 to 40 year horizon. But in 3 years, you could be the number one guy in X town, X city, or X region, down the way, and this is still $1 million a year. I'm like, I just want to be this guy in every area that I can. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Because like I know there's parts in New Jersey, as an example, that it is just very difficult for me to try to get a lot of deals done. They're selling at stupid cap rates. Every agent is a moron in that area where like they keep telling these people they're going to get 4 caps on their deals. And sometimes they're getting them and sometimes they're not, depending on a couple other variables, right? Long story short, though, I just know where I can compete like a madman and I know where I can't compete. And I'm okay just knowing that and saying, hey, I'll just dominate 80% of this market. You know, like I'm going to draw New Jersey as an example really terribly. If like hypothetically, 80% I can absolutely crush it and 20% is really fucking difficult, why would I try to sell the 20% that's fucking difficult? I don't want to, I kind of ignore the bottom piece of it because no one buys anything. And then I ignore a little portion of this. So I just sell everything else and it's not so difficult. So like whatever your area is, go like, hey, I'm just going to ignore Toronto, and that's okay because there's still $2 million a year in any other one of these markets. You just got to find where the business is.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, I was talking to a seller the other day who was asking for a 3 cap on a multi in Toronto.
Yeah, dude, like you're wasting your time. It's
Yeah,
a waste of time. It's a complete waste of time. And then you get frustrated because you're like, dude, I've worked X amount of months, X amount of years, and I'm generating these leads. You're doing all the right activities. You're literally just trying to, you're trying to do it in the hardest area possible. I'm just trying to tell you that it is infinitely easier if you just point in this direction versus this direction. That's all I'm saying. All right?
Yeah, makes sense. I had another question on specifics on multifamily deal. Should I wait till after 11 for that?
Yeah, let's do it during the 11 o'clock call. I'm going to do thank you so much for asking the price question. I appreciate you, man. Thank you. Hope that was helpful.
Yeah.